Hi, my name is Andy Palmer. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tamer and serving as track co-producer alongside my good friend JP Chavet for Virtual Track 6, the CDOIQ toolkit. It's my pleasure to introduce the next session, Data-Driven Enterprise Going from Mission to Value. In this session, you'll learn about how companies are realizing value by creating a culture and operating model that uses data to invent on behalf of customers using actioned insights, analytics, and AI and ML. Ishit is from AWS, is a former CXO, and will share the best strategies to turn a data vision into reality. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded. Any presentations will be included in the symposium proceedings. Video recordings will be uploaded to the CDOIQ YouTube channel 3 months after the symposium. And this session is pre-recorded. And so any questions should be addressed to the speaker directly and will be answered offline. With that, over to you, Ishit.
Hello and welcome to the session on Data-Driven Enterprise, going from vision to value. My name is Ishit Vachhrajani. I'm an enterprise strategist with AWS. I'm part of a team of former customer CXOs from large enterprise customers of AWS. Each one of us have led major transformation of our businesses using AWS Cloud. We now work with executives from some of the world's largest companies and help them with mental models and strategies to transform their business. And as you can imagine, the topic of how to unleash the value of data comes up very frequently in these conversations. So in this session today, I'm going to talk about why does it matter, but more importantly, how do we realize the vision of becoming a data-driven enterprise and convert that into real business value. Let's start with why does it matter? We know that data helps us make better decisions, but data helps us get to those decisions faster, and speed matters in today's business. For example, manufacturing company Georgia Pacific uses the power of data analytics to predict equipment failures months in advance before they happen, allowing them to schedule preventative maintenance and avoid expensive downtime. It is impossible to predict certain events, like global pandemic or geopolitical situations. But data allows us to pick and spot early trend, and then design our response based on the feedback that we are getting. For example, when global pandemic hit, Vachhrajani, which is a respiratory care company, was able to scale ventilator production 20x while improving the first pass yield, which is the measure of quality at which the product clears in the first go, 3x. Data also allows us to deeply understand our customers and then use that understanding to build amazing customer experiences. For example, Formula One uses over 70 years of historical data combined with real-time data coming from the sensors on the car and the track during any typical race to show overtake probability, pit strategy to the fans watching it from the comfort of their homes. Data also helps us reach new market segments and new customer segments. For example, Disney Plus has now expanded into 59 different countries since launch in 2019 using the power of cloud and data analytics. And data helps us do all of this while improving efficiency through automation and eliminating waste. Since 2015, using the power of machine learning and data, Amazon.com has reduced the outbound packaging size, so those are all the boxes that we all love to receive, by 33%. That has resulted into elimination of over 915,000 tons of waste. Now, that's not just efficient, but it also goes a long way towards achieving our goal to hit Paris Climate Accord goals by year 2040, 10 years ahead of the schedule. And those are the reasons that we think about becoming a data-driven enterprise. Now, one could argue that companies have always used data, and that's true. But the way data was used was different. In the past, data was used primarily to look back at what had already happened by senior leaders and executives within the company assessing past financial and operational performance of the company. That started to change with interactive queries and data visualization capabilities, where we got an ability to monitor what was going on and answer questions like, why did something happen? Data was still within silos, though. So if you had to correlate data from sales to marketing to finance to operation, that was still hard. The reason we are talking about becoming a data-driven enterprise now is because cloud has fundamentally altered the equation and given us capability to unleash the value of all of the data that we have and make it available to everyone. And not just to look back at what has already happened or what is happening right now, but to guide and predict and play scenarios into how can we make something happen. Now, having a lot of data is a good starting point, but a data-driven enterprise also knows how to build capabilities to convert that data into actionable insights, and then have culture which allows those actionable insights to be acted upon, because it's those actions those that drive outcomes. And when you achieve those outcomes, that's where you realize the business value. And still we find that while majority of the companies are investing in becoming data-driven enterprise, only about a quarter of them are successful. So the question is, how do we recognize and realize this vision of becoming a data-driven enterprise and convert that into value? Some of the ideas that are on this slide are heard often. Now, this is slightly tongue-in-cheek. Some of these are not bad ideas. They may actually help you become data-driven enterprise. But becoming a data-driven enterprise is much more than a series of checklist motions. It starts with creating and building a data-driven culture. And culture has to go beyond what is on the office walls or on corporate intranet. It has to transcend unstated behaviors and norms under which data is shared or information is shared and how decisions are made within the company. That culture then has to be supported by an organization structure which reduces the friction and distance between where the data is and where the decisions are made. You then have to build mechanisms which allow data-driven decision making to scale beyond leaders' line of sight and achieve data-driven action consistently and repeatedly throughout the whole enterprise. And finally, good strategy without execution is hallucination. And so we'll also talk about what are some ways to execute on modern data strategy. But let's start with culture. And the reason we are starting with culture is because majority of the leaders tell us that culture is one of the biggest impediment to becoming a data-driven enterprise. The mental model that I use is of 4 E's. The first is engage. To build a data-driven culture, it is not sufficient for executives to sponsor and invest into becoming a data-driven enterprise. Senior leaders have to show visible change in how they make decisions, how they share information, and how they conduct themselves by being deeply engaged into data-driven decision making at all levels. And so it has to go to deep engagement from the executive teams. That then has to be translated into enabling frontline action using the data. We hear a lot about democratizing access to data. Now that's important. But what is more important is democratizing decisions and action using that data. People who are on the front line, closer to your customers, do they not only have access to data, but are they empowered to act on that data. So enabling frontline action is the second E of building and creating a data-driven culture. The third is education. Treating data as a core proficiency for the entire company, not just the roles with data science and analytics in their title, but really building programs and mechanisms to drive education and awareness and data proficiency skills across all roles within the company at all levels. And then finally, and perhaps the most important one, is eliminate. We talk about data being in different silos of systems and databases and applications, but it's actually cultural and departmental and organizational silos that are guarding those systems and data silos that are even more difficult to overcome. So elimination of those silos require targeted change management and bold vision from the leadership. And so those are the 4 E's of how to build and create a data-driven culture. The second pillar is organization structure. A great culture has to be created, nurtured by the right organization structure. Traditionally, teams have been organized by activity and skills to minimize blame rather than maximize the work. A data-driven enterprise actually flips it. They bring cross-functional teams together from data science to product to engineering to business analysts to business stakeholders. And they align them around the outcome that these teams are empowered to achieve. These cross-functional teams are agile and they run what they build. And so they stay with customer and the outcome for a long period of time. They don't pass off the work once it is built to some other team to then run. When you're thinking about building a data-driven organization, there will be new skills and roles that will be needed. Now, some of these can be existing roles that may need to be upskilled, reskilled, and trained. Some of these could be new roles that may not exist today in your organization. For example, a single-threaded leader. At Amazon, we define a single-threaded leader as someone who wakes up and goes to sleep thinking about making one meaningful thing happen. When you're starting on this change, having an empowered, influential, and well-respected senior leader drive this change can go a long way. Having data is great, but the change is driven by stories. Stories are memorable. Having great skills in storytelling and visualization to combine the data will be critical in change management. Roles that can connect the dots across different silos. They can figure out how what marketing does impact sales and what sales does impact distribution and operation. Product management roles that can translate the science of data to the art of business. And then finally, data evangelist, passionate folks who educate and take upon themselves to promote and encourage the use of data throughout your organization and build excitement. These are some of the roles and skills that enable a data-driven organization. The third pillar is mechanisms. At Amazon, we believe that good intentions don't work, but mechanisms do. Mechanisms are a complete process that allow us to convert a set of input into a set of output while inspecting and constantly improving the process. And when it comes to mechanisms, I'm going to talk about 3 different aspects: measurement, governance, and data quality. Let's start with measurement. Now, one misunderstanding often is that a data-driven organization just measures everything. Now, measurement is important, don't get me wrong. But what is important, more important, is what is the intention behind that measurement and what outcome are you trying to achieve? Let me tell you a story, and it's a fable about a nail factory. There was a nail factory, and owner one day comes and says, I'm going to measure everybody based on the number of nails that you produce. She comes back at the end of the day to find out that thousands and thousands of tiny nails have been produced. True to the measure that she set, but completely useless for the customers. And so she said, you know what, that's not working. I'm now going to measure you based on the weight of the nails that you create. She comes back the next day to find one giant nail weighing tons has been created. Once again, true to the measure, but completely missing the point and not achieving the goal for the customer. And that, in essence, is Goodhart's law. When a measure becomes a target, it is no longer a good measure. Measures should be used sort of like driving a car, where you look at the speed, the direction to steer and adjust so that you reach your destination. We don't set a fixed target by saying, no matter what, I'm going to head northwest at 65 miles per hour. That's a recipe to hit a tree, not reach your destination. And so measures should be used to course correct, steer, and guide your teams and companies, not as some sort of fixed achievement of target. And that is the reason we have to move away from a fixed set of mindset to a relative variable consumption model. For example, data-driven companies don't speak in absolutes. A project does not take 18 months or 24 months, but rather how many features can we deliver every week. They don't talk about fixed set of budgets and investment that are decided years in advance, but rather burn rate. A server does not cost $100,000, but $1 per hour. And this is the reason virtually all data-driven organizations operate in cloud, because they have an ability to change the mindset from the fixed measurement and absolute to relative. When it comes to measurement, the second aspect to keep in mind is avoid watermelon goals. And what I mean by that are the goals where they are green on the outside, but red in the inside. They are green in the letter of the goal, but red in the spirit. Let's take an example. Say you have a direct-to-consumer service, and you decide to set a goal and optimize on a single target of increasing your retention rate. Well, one way to do this is to hide the cancel button and instead have everybody call 1-800-I-CANCEL and then have them go through 7 different options before they get hold of a human being to cancel their service. In the short run, your retention rate may go up, but it's terrible customer experience. To avoid this kind of over-optimization on a single dimension, it's important to set balancing measures. So for example, in this case, if along with retention rate, if you also measured engagement rate, not only that you are able to retain the customers, but are they actually spending time in your service? Are they actually using your service? What is the engagement telling you? Would help you avoid the watermelon effect. Let's talk about governance. Done right, governance can really supercharge your data-driven journey. But if you're not careful, it can also be a big hindrance. The goal of governance is to enable, not restrict, more safe, compliant, and faster access to data. But how do we do that? While setting up the governance framework, before designing policies and procedures and describing how somebody should have access to this data and what procedures they need to follow, start by defining tenets or guiding principles. The cross-functional teams that I described earlier should come together from compliance, security, risk, data science, product management, and define what are the guiding principles of your governance framework. Tenets and guiding principles help teams choose, and they avoid optimization in a single direction, as I mentioned earlier. Here are examples of some good tenets. Now, your tenets may look different. And as you can see, there is healthy tension between some of these tenets. And that's intentional because it is designed to make sure that your governance framework isn't optimizing in just one single direction. The second aspect is to centralize implementation while decentralizing decisions about the governance. What I mean by that is using tools like AWS Lake Formation to implement, define, auditing, policies, access control, monitoring in one single place so that you have consistency, visibility, transparency in your governance framework. But then pushing the decisions about who gets access, how is it managed, how is it controlled, down to the publishers and consumers of the data so that you can move fast while having confidence in your ability to audit, inspect, and improve your governance posture. The third element of setting up the right governance is having a strong data catalog. And there are a number of tools available by AWS to help you do that. But a good data catalog resides on the foundation of great metadata. Especially when you're dealing with regulations, they will continue to change and evolve. Having good data lineage, having good metadata about different data sources will allow you to respond better when these regulations change. The other aspect is around automation. Things that you have to do often, granting access, reviewing access, provisioning different users. Automating all of your bureaucracy not only will speed up the access to data, but also make it safer. And then finally, this goes without saying, but encrypt everything. Encrypt data at rest, encrypt data in motion, something that will go a long way in giving you a safe and compliant way to easily scale your data. The third mechanism that I want to talk about is around data quality. Now, data quality is often forgotten until we are ready to consume the data by building an analytical model, by running some machine learning workloads. And it's important to put data quality at front and center. In fact, incentivizing data quality at the point of capture rather than consumption will save so much effort to the teams downstream. And there are a few ways to do this. One is driving education to explain what is the impact and benefit of great data quality downstream is. No matter what level of automation we have, there will still be elements of manual data capture. And for those kind of things, it's important to only ask for what you need rather than asking for everything. The less is better here. And the other way to derive more fields is to use inferential data and automatically derive that. Past customer orders, historical data about customer transactions, addresses, zip code, anything that you can derive automatically without asking someone to enter it would help you build a better data quality. When it comes to data quality, it's also important to put it in the context of what you're going to do and how you're going to use that data. It isn't black and white. It isn't all or nothing. For example, if you're using data to report on financial performance or respond to auditing or compliance requirements, then the expectation of quality is different. Versus if you're running some experiment on different features in your customer experience on your mobile app, well, then the data quality expectation should be quite different for that use case. And so come up with a mechanism using the type of data, how you're going to use it, what is the level of validation that it has already gone through. And then come up with a score, a number, and maybe a traffic light based easy indicator on your data catalog so that the consumer of data can easily see what they can and cannot do with this data. For example, if the traffic light is yellow and the confidence level is 60%, maybe you can run some, or you can build some model in development, but you can't actually push it to staging and beyond. That brings us to execution, which is our fourth and final pillar of realizing the vision and converting that into value. When it comes to execution, it's important to think big, but execute small. And we always did not have this option, especially when it comes to data. While dealing with old guard databases and tools that were at our disposal in the past, they were very unforgiving. If you had to change something, a data model, add a field, or change how your ETL happened, that was time consuming and expensive. And so what we did is we spent a ton of time setting up the right foundation, thinking about all different scenarios, the granularity of data, the data model. A lot of time was spent in building foundation. Then we thought about who should have access to this data, how are we going to provide access to this data. And then finally, we thought about use cases. And so by the time you achieved some business outcome, a very long time passed. What cloud has allowed us to do is open more two-way door decisions. And what I mean by that are reversible decisions, allowing us to take an iterative approach to building and executing your data foundation, where you start with the business and then work backward from there. Start with the customer problem and work backward from that, bringing only the data that you need to help solve that problem. And continue to do that, incrementally delivering business value in smaller chunks, reducing time to value significantly in the process. When it comes to execution, data lake will be a big part of your strategy. What is important, though, is not to build a data lake to nowhere. And what I mean by that is if you have a lake without boat ramp or slips or hiking trails or ability to get there, or a beach maybe, it's beautiful to look at, but there's not much you can do with it. And that's the same thing with data lake. It's not about having a bunch of data in a lake. It's also about figuring out how are we going to integrate that in the workflow to achieve the business outcome. One way to do this is to make sure that the focus is not just in consumption of data, building analytical models and machine learning to achieve the outcome, but also capturing the right data. Transactions that happen in the back of the napkin or in some spreadsheet that nobody knows about. A strong data strategy sits on top of a strong application and integration strategy. Integrate data into core product and part of the workflow so that people don't have to go to yet another place to access the data, but rather they have it on their fingertip when they're working on something. And finally, using right tool for the right job. The time to use old guard databases and systems was last decade. Today, it's important to give builders choices so that they can use purpose-built databases and tools that cloud makes it available to move faster and achieve the outcome. That brings us to the point about how do we get started. It is important to start business and customer backward rather than data forward. What I mean by that is start by identifying few impactful, visible, and relatable use cases. And I use those words deliberately. What you start with has to be impactful. It should matter to your business. Because if successful, it will create momentum for you that will help trigger a data flywheel that will accelerate your journey. Something that is relatable and visible that everybody in the company can get behind and get excited about. Then create a starting hypothesis. What do you expect to happen at the end of this? This hypothesis may need to be revised, maybe changed. Maybe you will come out at the end of your data-driven experiment to figure out that hypothesis was wrong. But it's important to start with building the hypothesis. Then create that cross-functional teams that I talked about that is empowered and fully autonomous. And start by driving the culture change. Incrementally build data in the cloud using the purpose-built databases and tools. Create the culture which allows that to be acted upon. And then have a mechanism to collect feedback to improve what you pick next. And that's how you create a data flywheel. So we have talked about 4 pillars of realizing the vision of becoming a data-driven enterprise across culture, organization structure, mechanism, as well as execution. There are many ways that AWS can help in this journey. If you need peer-level guidance for your executive team to inspire, as well as learn from former CXOs, then our team of enterprise strategy is here to help. If you need help setting the vision and strategy for your data, then we have our data-driven everything program, which can help you get started on that flywheel. If you already have a strategy, but need help in executing it, then we have our data lab program. There are a number of ways that we can help get you started. Thank you so much for listening in, and have a fantastic rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thanks, Ishit, and appreciate the comments and great presentation. And everyone, we will be back together for our last session of the day in 30 minutes, and look forward to seeing you then.